Hi, Chitra.
Hi, Shiv.
Yeah, you seem quite thrilled today. What's happening?
Yeah, I just realized that there is a day every day to celebrate special events. They talk about Curious Events Day.
Uh-huh.
There is a Moments of Frustration Day.
Uh-huh.
There is a Looking for Circles Day.
Wow.
And so many other days. It's almost like you can create or make an event out of anything and
But
dedicate a day to it.
yeah, did you know that podcasters have a day?
Why not?
Ah,
I mean, amidst all these days with
yeah.
podcasting being such a pervasive medium now, why not celebrate
Yeah,
podcasters?
there is an International Podcasting Day, and in Bangalore, we are going to be celebrating this on the 28th
I'm
of this month.
excited about it. I'm
Yeah,
so excited about it.
yeah. And I'm excited because we might get to meet our listeners.
That would be fabulous.
Yeah. So if you're in Bangalore, do join us on the International Podcast Day celebrations. The venue is to be decided. You can check our show notes for the URL to sign up. It's being hosted by Hubhopper. So podcast.hubhopper.com. Check for the International Podcasting Day. See you there on the 28th.
Hey, listeners of the Software People Stories, looking forward to meeting and seeing you all on the 28th of September. Do join us to celebrate International Podcasting Day. Thank you for listening to this message. And now, on to our regular episode.
Hi, I'm Shiv.
And I'm Chitra.
We are the co hosts of this show, Software People Stories.
We're happy to bring you stories of people associated with software as makers or consumers.
In every episode, we talk to people on their own personal and professional journeys.
Their interests and approach to work and life in a free flowing conversational format. We hope that you will be able to draw your inspiration from their experiences and insights.
These podcasts are made possible by PM Power Consulting, who have helped individuals, teams, and organizations on their delivery excellence journeys. Welcome to this episode. My guest today is Neelu, PK Neelakantan, who's not a stranger to the PM Power audience, as he has been a guest blogger as well. He talks about two significant phases of his career and also the transition from being a consultant or an external person giving recommendations to somebody who's actually implementing it within the organization. He also talks about how it was losing a job at the time of the dot-com bust, and in his own humorous way talking about an environment where the programmers that he worked with were younger than the programs that they were working on, and get into some of the leadership aspects of managing knowledge workers, as well as what you can tell demanding users, and how some of the challenges in his business development role in terms of conveying the value of what a software platform or a product can deliver, and literally when he was forced to jump into data lakes, and then how he's been adopting that for the benefit of his current organization, and some more on handling things which are beyond one's control, and also a managerial style of doing together and inspiring, and not being able to please everyone all the time. And with all that, how do you still earn the team's trust by adding value in all the interactions? Overall, very interesting, and it is always fun to talk to Neelu. Listen on. Hi, Neelu. Welcome to the Software People Stories podcast. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and I've enjoyed all your blogs, including the one that is waiting when you're on hold. This conversation did take a while, so I didn't mind that wait time. So now that we are here, we normally start with the guest introducing oneself. Of course, many of our audience would know you as you've been a guest blogger on the PM Power site as well. So we'll start with your introduction and then take it from there.
Thank you, Shiv. And it's always a pleasure, of course, talking to you also. And we go way back, and it's a great opportunity to look back and just reflect. I'm also very happy to be on this program as a guest. So it's definitely something that I was looking forward to after listening to when you told me last week. And yeah, it's if we want to start off with some kind of introduction about what I've done. It's been about 4 decades of experience in this field with some notable brief departures from it too. But for the most part, I've stuck to software development in one capacity or the other. When I look back, there is almost an even division between working for a software company or a consulting company and going into client organizations and helping them. And the second part being working for a company as part of the IT. And it's like suddenly the shoe's on the other foot. And how does that get you kind of situation? So it has been an interesting transition. I think about 18 years ago, I started working for the local community college district, which is a pretty large organization. It's a public sector institution, entirely funded by the state, so with its own dynamic. And in terms of what I have done, I started off obviously as a development or a software engineer writing programs, but with Tata Burroughs, I was able to grow pretty quickly and assume some leadership positions. And eventually, I left Tata Burroughs to join a startup in Bangalore, where I was for a couple of years, and then I switched and joined Tata IBM when IBM came back in '94. And that was a completely different kind of responsibility because what I was doing till then had been mainly, or I should say with the startup also, I was doing some of that. Because with the startup, I had responsibility as business development manager, although we being how a startup is always pretty lean. So you end up getting involved in all aspects. Once you go into a place, make a proposal, and if you win the job, then you start working on that, and you have to lead that too. So it was a loose term when they say business development manager. It's more, it ended up being, at least in the 2 years I was there, quite a bit of development also. But what I was doing for Tata IBM was industry marketing. So it was quite a departure. And it was exciting because it's the times India at '94, things were just happening at that time, I think. And you had a sense of, a lot of greenfield opportunities where you could walk in, and we were trying to sell packages there, and it was in pre-sale. And so it was a different kind of experience. But that was only about a little over 2 years, I think. And then as fate would have it, I guess, I had this offer to come and work for a company in the US. And my wife and I debated for almost 2-3 months before we decided that, okay, we'll take it up. And then I moved. And this was kind of a, move for good, so to speak. Even though at that time we always, maybe 4 or 5 years we'll come back, but we knew at that time too that it would be difficult, especially with, uprooting kids. And you're doing it once and don't want to do it again. So we ended up in, for 3 years we were in Michigan and then moved to San Diego. So with the company that I joined in '94 in the US, I was with them for about 7 years. And we did some things that were probably, I'm going to say pioneering. It's not like we were the first to do it, but I know with Tata Burroughs, we did a few offshore projects, fixed price. But in this particular company that we walked into, for instance, an organization like Ford Motors, we had never done anything like that. And we made a pitch for it, and we delivered a few projects very successfully. So at least that was path-breaking in terms of establishing the credentials or credibility of doing that with Ford Motor Company. And, our projects won awards within Ford too. So it was very satisfying. But then after that, I came to San Diego and worked on this project. It was a time when I think a lot of players entered, and the year 2000 changes were happening. So it was a mad rush to grab business. And slowly, with all the competition and prices started going, it was a race to, I wouldn't say bottom, but definitely what our company was commanding at one time, it couldn't sustain as we got a lot of the big players, especially, Infosys, TCS, and everybody else with Pro. So it was quite a bit of flux around that time. And then in 2001, I decided that I was going to do something else, maybe on my own. And a friend of mine and I were trying to get, we had somebody who had potentially had a project for us. And so at that point, my company wanted me to move to Phoenix. And with children where they were in high school and all that, I decided that it was better not to move. And I was going to do something on my own. But fortunately, the deal that we were hoping for fell through. In the meantime, my company said, well, if you don't want to move, we'll just shake hands. So I found myself out of a job, and that was the time when we had the dot-com bust. So it was a pretty tough situation. It took a few months, and I had to actually settle for a developer position and then climb my way back up. So if you took 3-4 years, then I was back as the application development manager, which is what I've been doing last several years, more than 10, 12 years now. And in 2010, the community college district, with the state budgets were going through a really bad time. And of course, our budgets were very constrained. They decided that rather than having a company as an outsourcer or contractor doing everything, we had 60-odd people doing everything for their IT, from desktops all the way to the mainframe. And it was a peculiar contract. I'll talk about it a little bit in terms of why, certain things stand out in my, in the experience here. So they decided that they would save money by bringing us all in as employees, and once again getting back into in-house IT. And they did the transition pretty successfully. So I became a public sector employee at the point. I've been with them for the last 9.5 years now. So in terms of what it meant working for a consulting organization, you walk in with a set of, there is a certain protocol. So you have a, expectation that you have a contract, for instance, and there are numbers and there are various clauses, and of course there is change control. And so things are pretty important. It's important to have, sign-offs on various things, phase reviews, and anything that happens beyond that, scope changes, and it's a pretty tightly controlled environment. So where as a project manager, I was playing a crucial role in making sure that my company's interests were protected, but at the same time, we were delivering value to the customer. So it was, really speaking, I would say, your first order of business is really make sure that project is on an even keel and it succeeds and it delivers satisfaction, but not while you incur all kinds of scope creep without change control or additional money being put up. So, but this process builds certain expectations when you're working in this. And some of the companies that we worked for at that time also had very well-defined, structured, large organizations which had phase reviews and standards and ways of doing things. So either you walk in with your standards, or even if you do, if the company has their own, you adapt to that and you follow that. That's how you work. I'm sure you're familiar with that model. But when I joined, I also, seen companies, we also all seen some clients who are very loose on these kind of things. And, if you really wanted to evaluate their departments or whatever in terms of their capabilities or the CMMs, whatever, different models, Sigma, all that stuff, you would probably find them very wanting. And then where you walk in, it's difficult even to get some of these rigorous methodologies accepted there. But we've all seen that. But the job, when you join this as a part of the client organization, part of the IT department, I found that this district is, like I say, it's funded by a state, and they're very cost conscious. And the idea, even when you're outsourced, is that IT is like an amorphous thing there. So they just say, you get this done and you get it done. There's no question of saying, okay, it's going to cost so much. There was no point, raising that. There's no change control except to say, okay, in terms of schedules, why you might not be able to complete something because there's more work. But it was just assumed that you would get it done. And if you wanted to add additional programmers, that was impossible unless you go through a process of proposing some additional, say, one more programmer is required. It needs to go to the board for approval and all that stuff. New position, essentially. Even if it was a contracting position, it couldn't just be, you couldn't just add on unless you were willing to eat the cost. So it was that totally different kind of environment. And so it took a while to adjust. Because what are the standards? What standard? Nobody really had anything like that. But one time I used to joke that some of the programmers were younger than the programs they were working on. So these are programs from the 80s or even earlier maybe. But the thing is that one of the things that really hit me then is that, we software professionals in general owe allegiance to the technology first and foremost. And I've seen this throughout my career when I've managed software professionals who are essentially knowledge workers. It's a very different thing from managing other kinds of people, in my opinion. But they're a lot of times that they're very keen on the technology and, things like they want to move on, learn new things. Here we are, we got a mainframe, COBOL DB2, which they had just switched to DB2 when they did the year 2000 remediation apparently, and CICs and whatnot running the administration system. But we had the challenge now to move everything, not move everything, I would say, but make everything available on the web for the students and faculty. So there was all kinds of tools probably available. You can switch to newer technologies, but it was not about what you do in the back end, but how it really is delivered to the user. And the users don't have a clue that you've got this mainframe in the background running things for them. So it was all some screen scraper and CICS transactions still, but on the front end, you're looking at a web page and clicking and going through, drop-down lists and everything else. So technology, for technology's sake, so to speak, was just never available there. And there was moments where, you start wondering, your professional advancement might might take a back seat, in fact. But there were opportunities when something like that comes up and they say, okay, we want to implement this data mart now. And so here's a SQL box. You install SQL Server on this Windows box and go and create a data mart for the research department. That was the brief given to me. So you get those kind of things too. Then you start learning on your own mostly, whatever you need to, because SQL is SQL, but still there are other aspects of it. So it's a different environment. I think I'm giving you the flavor of how different it was, I hope. And so we've also gone through another transition the last 4 or 5 years now. Been trying to implement, we've just, I would say, completed, we're completely on this new system, live on the new system. PeopleSoft moved over from the mainframe, and over the last weekend, in fact, we just brought down the web portion of the student interface, which was still running for the older terms. We just know in the fall of 2019, everything is now for the students and faculty on the PeopleSoft system. So it was kind of a watershed moment. We retired that old behemoth, and whatever you might, probably a clunker, but it did deliver. It was pretty robust. And today was opening day for the fall term, and there was a lot of problems with the new system. But of course, those are teething problems. But it's a big transition for the users who've been used to, especially in the back room, they were used to looking at green screens. Now they have a completely different interface. So that's kind of there have been highs and lows in this, obviously. I feel, there's also the ups and downs in the career, obviously, and personal priorities taking higher precedence over the professional at times. And it's all in all, it's almost at the fag end of my career. I think it's been satisfying. Working for a nonprofit is somehow you get a sense of, contributing to the community at large. But this really serves a lot of students. And California Community College is almost, they charge pittance. It's $46 a unit. It's unheard of anywhere else in the country, I think. Although there are probably a lot of students don't even pay that because they get waivers because of the economic situation. So it does provide, it's in that sense, fulfilling in some sense, even if on the technology side, you might not see that way. So overall, it's probably also that as you mature, you see things in a different perspective. So that's in a brief sketch of my career. I don't know if anything, would you have any observations on that, comments, questions?
Yeah, sure, Neelu. I think that covers a lot of dimensions. And I am curious about two of those in particular. One, we've not had an opportunity to talk about it in this podcast so far, which is on the business development side. And that theme seems to have been there with you throughout in terms of understanding the value and whether you were a consultant or you were part of the organization. And I like the phrase that you use that IT is amorphous. In that kind of situation, how were you able to convince someone to invest in software development, whether it is a package or custom development? And have there been any stories that would help our listeners in understanding how one can articulate the value of software.
Yeah, okay. So that actually I have to go back to the experience in India, which is, I think it does stand out in my mind at least. There were several clients that we were pursuing when I was with Tata IBM. And one of them, actually two places where we actually made sales of software packages, and that was unheard of. Then there was one in the startup that I worked. We worked with Color Chem. We made a proposal, and first of all we said, well, we will do an 8-week, 10-week study, requirements study, and then we'll come back with a proposal. And I can't remember now whether we charged them for the study or not. But when we gave a proposal, this was in 91, some thereabouts, maybe late 90 or 91, because I joined that place in 90. So sometime in 1990, I think, late. We gave a proposal for just software development, and there was of course a proposal, what kind of hardware would be required and all that. It's just 34 lakhs. And when we did that, I think at that time this was kind of an unheard of thing, unheard of amount. It was a comprehensive software development proposal, and Color Chem was a subsidiary, it was at least a part of X AG from Germany, and they were I think there was some suggestion that they should look at SAP. But this proposal, I remember talking to one of the associates, but they were associated with my boss, essentially, they were friends, but he used to be a professor at IIM, I think, but he had started his own software company. He said, come on, Neelu, this is unheard of. 34 lakhs, congratulations. Whether you win the contract or not, you've set some kind of precedent, right? So where we actually got the contract, and the reason for getting the contract, the proposal that we made was very heavy on the business benefits that they would get. And we quantified certain things, looking at their balance sheet, and then say, hey, you have this kind of inventory percentage. If you just shave off, and there's like very realistic numbers we put together, and the whole thing adds up to this, and 34 lakhs plus the hardware and all that, it's just nothing compared to all the saving potentially you can get. But in doing that also, there was very funny moments, I would say, also in that when we talk to the actual users and trying to convince them. One example I'll give you, and then I'll move on to the other kinds of experiences. For the purchasing department, we had put together, okay, these are the specifications for the purchasing module. As a manager, you need to review and sign off on this. So again, we're in that contractual, all that stuff. But he took that into my, it's like next day I met him and said, have you read this? No, everything is there, no, Neelakantan? He said, I don't know, I can tell him everything is there. It's not my place to say everything is there. Well, I realized that whether I say yes or not, he's assuming that it's going to be there. But one of the things he asked me then, are you recommending that we hire more typists? And this was like, why were you asking that? The biggest thing that they were facing, and this is mind-blowing to me, that they had, because the stenographers were union staff, and they would type up so many purchase orders, that's it. If you wanted more, they had to pay overtime, and so on and so forth. And so the purchase orders were always in backlog. And without a purchase order being sent to the vendor, you're not going to get the material to the stores and the shop for the manufacturing. And you cannot afford to have manufacturing starved of material. So the buyer would call the vendor and then say, you send it, we'll send the purchase order, don't worry, and the material will show up. So now this is his, where the shoe pinches. Well, I don't know what to tell him. We were actually proposing something like, when you log into this, till then they were looking at reports. The buyer would take this. Okay, now I have these vendors. He'll go through some analysis. This is the inventory report. This is the stock position. This thing, order point, and all that. He will assemble all the details and give it to the stenographer who type up the order. Now we are saying, look, your system is smart enough now. It's monitoring this stock on hand. It's going to be able to pull up. When you log in, it'll say, oh, hello, so and so, whatever you can read. But it'll tell you action items. You need to order what you need to order today. And then if you say, okay, click on that, or not click in those cases, I don't think we had that level of sophistication, but it did have some. We were trying to do the WIMS, Windows icons, mouse, whatever. Then it'll enable you essentially to say, okay, you pick the vendor, and you pick the order quantity or whatever, and then it'll put it all together and print the purchase order. So there's no real need for a stenographer. So I don't want to tell them that actually we're going to recommend you need to get rid of them. So that was quite an eye-opener. The way people saying it, where the problems are, we don't even realize that, when we walk into this kind of situation. And this was again brought to me in short focus another time when this is a different company. I think it was probably Maruti Udyog or something. And I glibly asked them, I think it was a purchasing system or something else, but or maybe it was a stores company. It's an overall system, okay, whatever, it's inventory control. And so what is your biggest problem? And I asked them, they said, it's pilferage. How does that system tackle pilferage? It kind of took the wind out of my sails. So again, this is kind of thing that we don't expect. But all in all, this kind of tells you when you walk in, we got convinced why they should be looking at a solution, package solution. And so again, in the next job, like Tata IBM, I walked into this place, I don't know, it was Rane Power Steering or one of those autos ancillary manufacturers. They were about to place an order with the competitor for a Unix box with Oracle with 16 user license, and then they were going to build a software. Here we are talking to them about, don't go that route. You're not in the software business. Your core competencies are elsewhere. Here we are proposing a system with proper solution attached to it. So, there's a box and just software, database software and everything, but we were proposing, I think, Bond software at the time. We had signed up Bond as a reseller. Okay. So it took some convincing. I had to do all kinds of, that at least where my background in manufacturing software helped me a great deal in convincing it. And finally, we spent several hours and we were getting late for a train. He signed the order and then we rushed to the station to catch the train. But that was a very, I think, a seminal moment in Indian software industry, I would say, selling a package that is not, giving it away for free. And we had to get the vice president of Bond from Dutch and Netherlands to send a fax saying that we're excited to have you as the first customer, etc., etc. The second one also was very interesting. This was in Metupalayam, one of the export-oriented textile companies, where we managed to sell an AS400 with BPIX. Now, to me, that place, there is a Modulali. You know what I mean? There's a CEO, he's the owner.
The owner. Yeah.
Everybody else, he has 100% of the power. The rest is shared equally by the rest.
Okay.
That place, you walk in, you got to say, hey, I said, I think that was credit goes also to the sales guy who managed to get you on that kind of thing. But we were able to, do that kind of thing. And I've talked to some others who was there, and I left, of course, but where I walked in another place, I don't remember, it was Thermax or one of those places. So, okay, he said, well, I'll give you 15 minutes. And he tried to convince me why. And I said, we would like to come and do a study and then propose something. I give you 15 minutes. You convince me why we should engage you. But then we ended up talking for 45 minutes. And he was convinced that there was value in it. What I'm saying is that the requirements are not apparent to the users. They are looking at it from their limited experience of what they have done and where the shoe pinches, especially. And they may or may not realize what it can do. So those are, and also there's a focus on hardware. That's how people used to sell it. What kind of MIPS, what kind of this, all that is not, they are useful and they're important, but that's not the real solution. That's not where the real solution lies. So that's always been a guiding principle. And, even in this, when we talk to the users and I tell my developers, and anybody who complains that the users are demanding this or that, I say, that's what we do. We deliver, make sure that they are happy with it, ultimately. And I really caught some people saying, one of the users was saying, is this too difficult to do? And I said, why do you worry about it? We'll try to figure it out. If not, we'll come back and say why it can be done, cannot be done, or it will take too long. But you should state what you require first and buy it, not be worrying about that. So if they're worried about things like that or technology or something else, I don't know. We don't deliver value ultimately. We end up doing something which I think they want to hear, for instance, sometimes. But you'll have to push back also, saying, oh, that's a bad idea, like we did with the auto ancillary manufacturer. And in fact, it came to a point where he said, well, what for all this, I decide to go with your competition. And I told him, look, we would be very sorry to hear that, but we'll not accept it. And he respected that again, But I'm not going to just give you some BS and say, okay, well, so that's very important, at least to me, to have that kind of integrity. And then that, when you are part of this organization for 18 years, one unfortunate that happened when PeopleSoft was being implemented is that they got third-party implementer in place, but they were almost keeping the IT department out. And it was something that I complained about. But, it was various reasons, I suppose, but it was not a good idea. And so we're paying the price for it. But I had earned the respect of people to say, okay, if I said that, this is not a good idea, they're willing to listen now. If something needs to be done, they'll consult me. But that somehow got out of that, vitiated in this whole 3 years or so of this. They had a bit of experience with the vendor. So we're not a great place now, but we're trying to pull it together. But that's again, it's when you are able to show that you really are committed to this and committed to delivering something that works for them, then you get the response and a reciprocation also.
Yeah, I think that's very, very powerful. One is the integrity, understanding them, and actual value from their perspective. Yeah. Very good. The second thing that struck me was you didn't mention these words, but then I just tried to rephrase it as another career roller coaster in terms of roles. So all of us go through ups and downs in at work, at career, different phases, etc. How do you stay balanced personally when you go through these ups and downs?
So I think it depends on your personality. I think I have always had a certain almost detached approach, I would say, to things in general. I don't insist, that I get my way. Even when I'm managing a team, sometimes I feel like, especially, developers, my hands are like itching. I know how I can actually do it and probably faster, but I want them to grab at it. I want to give them the freedom to work it out. So in general, if things go south, I have, maybe it's also probably my upbringing and having seen, my father go through things and how he took things. I probably watched and learned from that too, that I learned that it's no point in fretting about it. You have to the situation can go wrong. First thing is you have to accept it first. Yes, this is what it is. And then you can start thinking about how am I going to recover from it? How am I going to move on? But that's the hard part. Initially, if you get overwhelmed emotionally, it takes a while. Sometimes it takes longer. But if you don't have the ability to quickly regain perspective, and then say, okay, and then move further, look out, it's okay, this is not meant to be, somehow it went bad. Maybe I've learned something. Maybe next time I'll be watchful. But whatever you do, the critical thing to remember is that any project succeeds because of a number of factors. A few are under your control, but not everything is in your control. And if something goes wrong, which is outside of your control, and you lose, you can lose pretty badly. And I've had that experience too. A project where I was brought on kind of late, but there was only so much I could do. And I could see that it wasn't going to go well. And it didn't go well, and we lost the contract. But early on, probably, one of the things that I should have insisted on is that they said, these, we want this. We want you to present, data flow diagrams and this and that. But it was not a project where that was appropriate, actually. Because they were trying to, on one hand, take their, whatever system they had, it was a capitation system for a health insurance company, and just move it to a different platform. Essentially, that's what they were wanting to do. But that's not a place where you do a very intense requirements analysis and provide some rigorous DFDs and so on and so forth. But this was something that Kamita and I kind of went along with it. Maybe if I said, look, no way we can do this. This is not a project where we can do this. Maybe we would have been told, look, then, okay, there's no contract then at that point. Although they had been engaging with us for a while, that I was just not on that, but it might have been better in the long run. So, but when things go wrong, we have to recognize what went wrong also. And the initial punch in the gut or whatever it is that you feel, then you realize, okay, what went wrong. It was not something that I could have controlled, then I can learn from it. If it's outside of my control, then I do my best and it still didn't work out. That's the way of life. Sometimes things outside your control, you cannot insist that they work out somehow and make you succeed. But it also tells you when you succeed, and succeed sometimes very wildly beyond your own expectations, that you have the humility to say, hey, a lot of things came together and helped me succeed here. So that's a balance that I have strived to achieve. So it's both ups and downs. It needs to be kept in mind. It's not just when things go bad that you can apply this. It has to be applied when things go very well too.
Yeah, that sounds simple, but I'm sure it took a long time to get that balance.
I think what helped,
go ahead.
Yeah, what helped me, one thing to add, what helped me also during this time, I was studying the Bhagavad Gita. And if you look at what the essence of Karma Yoga is, this is what it's saying, really. And I've always felt that, whatever we do, I've done a lot more studies since. I've learned the Upanishads, etc. I'm studying still, listening to, lectures and all that. But I always come back to this. This is where I am, really, and this is where I have something actionable. We read all this and then say, well, this is all esoteric or this is beyond, but this is definitely actionable. It puts it in a certain way, okay, you dedicate everything to God and accept everything as prasad. But what are we doing here, Lee? If you say you take the approach that I have this goal and these are the things I need to do, but what comes out, I'll accept. in spite of my best efforts, if it doesn't come to my, to the expectations that I've had, I would still accept it, provided I have the satisfaction that I did the right thing. I did my best. It was not to be this time, but I'll continue. So that's very important thing to cultivate, I think.
So this triggers one question. I thought I had asked you all the questions, but this one I can't not ask you. With this kind of an approach, you also mentioned that you've been in situations where there are programmers who are younger than the programs and those who want to work on the latest, greatest or the technologies. How have you been able to get them appreciate these kinds of values or be able to focus on the value at hand or what the business needs? I'm sure there could be a conflict that they would have to resolve internally.
Right. So, I mean, sometimes the opportunities for professional advancement are limited. In this situation, I'm not sure. This is not something that I've observed, but it's not always something that I can offer something to counter that. But what I have provided, I think, is that a certain kind of leadership. And I don't think software development manager is the same as a project manager. You might do project management also, but software development management has at least demanded things that a project manager may or may not need to bring to the table. So you are working with people who are knowledge workers, as I said. They're not, to be just commanded and go forth and do things. So they have to see some satisfaction in what they do. And this is where I think, even if you write a COBOL program or something else, there are things that people take pride in their work. So one of the things that I've found very important is that being able to contribute in a meaningful way. If somebody walks into my office with an issue, there's a crisis where, I'm first in the trenches and sitting down with them and exploring options and suggesting things and actually doing things too. And that brings about a certain, let's say, it does earn their respect. But more than that, it's not that, it's just the commitment that you show permeates their attitude also. There have been situations where we have, for the mainframe, we used to have overnight callbacks. A lot of the batch programs would run between midnight and 6 a.m. And if something goes down, a person on call would be called on the phone, and you'd have to go and look at the system and then figure out what needs to be done. And we had a team of 6 programmers on rotation, and I was on the escalation list. Slowly, people retired and all that. Suddenly, we had only 3 programmers before. Then they complain, look, the rotation is coming much faster, and they're not really getting. I said, look, I'll add myself to the rotation. So every 4 weeks, I was on call.
Okay.
So these kind of things. Yeah, so, I would receive call in the middle of the night, and I would have to work on it. So they saw that. And if they had a problem, again, they could approach me even in the middle of the night if they had an issue. Look, I'm going to do this, and I have some doubts. Can you look at this and say, that it's okay? So they had the ability to do that, and I was made available for them at that level. But in the office, when they walk in, I want to make sure that they leave feeling that there has been some value addition. That's why they come to me, because I add value, and I'm able to contribute at that level. And I know the ins and outs of the program, of the logic in the business, as much or better than any of, which is not because I just that my approach, I was able to get to things also because I really had to. Because there are certain things that, just nobody else has looked at it, then you have to look at it and figure it out. And then it becomes your, expertise. Then you can train them. Fine. So that kind of thing with professional knowledge workers, it may not just be software. That's how you can probably, that's why I said you're a leader, not necessarily just a manager. So that helped in giving them a sense of, what we are doing here in terms of getting the users. The users appreciated our work. And over the years, they've, shown that, talked about it and said, so those are the kinds of things that we could do. But every time there is a new thing, we can involve somebody and give them the responsibility and have some training if possible. Now the people saw we could do some training, so there's a new opportunity, but a lot of people had retired by then, unfortunately. Probably the mainframe crew, I'm the only one left. The other programmer has been in some kind of a workman's comp so he's been off for a while. But now that we have retired. But it's this kind of thing that's always important. Now that I'm in a new system, I make it my business also to learn enough to be able to contribute. Otherwise, if you can just be, I've seen project managers come and go, and they only know Microsoft Project, and they can produce reports and then say whose task, which is behind, which is that, which is a function that needs to be done. I'm not denying that, and I had to do that too when I was delivering projects on a fixed price bid. But even there, it was important, especially when we were sending the work to be done in India, to be able to define, I think I mentioned this in my blog, but a really thorough handbook, so to speak, saying how things are done in this place, what are the standards, and what are we aiming to do, what kind of utilities are we setting up, and then it makes it very easy for the offshore team to execute the rest of it. I've seen a complete contrast of that with the implementer that we had for PeopleSoft. They sent a lot of work to India, and I'm seeing an absolute ridiculously bad stuff that has come back. Absolutely no real coordination between the team here and the team back in Bangalore. So it's not always possible. Some people left. Some people even thought, this place isn't good enough for me. One person said, there's no standards. You're not following these things. I want specs to be like this. We don't always write specs to that level of detail. Sorry, I told him. And he left. I said, okay, goodbye. So I can't say that I was always successful in making sure that they were happy, but that's what this is what you could do in a limited situation to retain people. And, it is satisfying when people tell me that, it was a great experience working for me. And someone retired, those 3 or 4 will always say, you were one of the best or best managers that we've had. And it's because I was willing to understand. I understood their position and I was willing to put myself out there. That's the right approach. I don't know. Maybe that's too much, but I don't know. So that's what I've done.
Wonderful, Neelu. That's about all the time that we have for this episode. And with your stories, I'm sure we will have opportunities to talk more. And of course, your guest blogs, please do continue them. I hope to stay in touch more regularly.
Sure. Yeah, this was great. I really enjoyed this. And thank you for inviting me. I hope people find something useful in this. Like I said, there are some of these things that stick out. And, I definitely have a couple of other good examples which we can talk about later. I've been writing something last couple of months or so to put together some of the things that I have observed with requirements gathering, and hopefully I'll complete it sometime. And it's just been a little busy at work for a while. So if I do, I'll definitely send it your way and see if you think that makes sense for your audience. But it's been wonderful talking to you, Shiv, as always. And of course, we'll stay in touch and hope to talk to you again.
Sure. Thanks, Neelu. Bye.
Okay. All right. Bye.
If you like the show and would like to share your experiences with the community or know someone else who might want to do that, please get in touch with us at pm-powerconsulting.com. That is podcast@pm-powerconsulting.com.
Please rate the show on Podchaser, Stitcher, iTunes, or any other podcast client that you find us on. Please also share our episodes with your friends and others in your network. If you or anyone you know would like to be featured on our show, do write to us at this email address: podcast@pm-powerconsulting.com.